It's 7-0. Brian Dolan, Griffin, Lussier. Teamer aggro, Esper Dragons. This is why Standard is awesome.
Not decks you would necessarily associate about a month ago with being on the radar, but here we are.
We're underway. It's an island here for Griffin. Brian's side, he has a Frontier Bivouac. Lussier will play a Flooded Strand, pass the turn back over to Dolan. Savage Knuckleblade the draw.
Oh, yeah.
Big Nugs.
How can this card possibly be fair, they said, when spoiled.
I was part of that camp.
Mm-hmm.
Wild Slash, we're going upstairs.
I was not. I've seen this song and dance before. That's not to say that Knuckleblade is a weak card. It's way above the curve.
It's obviously not weak.
Yeah. It's just, you know.
It's not as good as I think people thought it was going to be, that's all.
Yeah.
A couple wooded foothills over here for Dolan. He'll play a Yavimaya Coast, however. And there is Big Nug, so he'll have to take one to cast it. See if this will resolve or not. Flooded Strand will be sacrificed.
Not a good sign for old Knuckleblade resolving here.
Probably not. Dissolve, Slumgar Scorn. A couple of different ways that Lussier can go. Let's see what Rhodey does want to take. Looks like he's going to go the Dissolve route, and he will. So it's time to scry from the Dissolve. Take a look at that top card.
And this is how much play versus draw can matter. You see Ultimate Price in Griffin's hand there. If Brian had been on the play with the turn 3 Knuckleblade, it's possible Griffin just doesn't have an answer.
Yep.
And it can do a ton of damage.
And a lot of people have moved towards Ultimate Price, but you think about the two cards that are cheap for black, and Ultimate Price and Bile Blight, neither of them killed Knuckleblade.
Mm-hmm.
That's a removal that these black decks or these Esper Dragons decks kind of rely on. You saw Lussier misses land drops. Now here's a Courser of Crewfix for Dolan.
Reasonable Ultimate Price target here.
Stubborn Isle, the top card of the deck. There's a Wooded Foothills. Trigger the Courser back up to 20. Pass that turn back. Ultimate Price, perhaps? Yes. I'll take care of the Courser. Stubborn Isle will be turned face down. Lussier will draw. Flooded Strand. It might be wise here for Griffin to maybe try to cast that Dig Through Time now, as the fourth land was a Flooded Strand. That'd be the fourth card in the graveyard, so that would equal 8.
It seemed like a reasonable spot to do it.
Especially when you know that Stubborn Isle is on top of your opponent's deck. Now it seems unlikely that he'll be able to use Dig Through Time the way that he wants to.
Well, I don't know. It depends what he's got going on in his hand here. If he's sitting on a counterspell like Dissolve or Slumgar Scorn that he can kick up, I don't mind just passing this one turn because you can fend off Brian's, you know, Thunderbreak Region or Storm Breath Dragon type of play. If Brian has nothing at all, then you don't care about the Stubborn Denial very much. You can take your time. So I agree with you. That's a good spot to do it. But if Griffin has a counterspell here, I'm fine with just not casting anything at all.
It looks like he may have a counterspell here. And he does in Slumgar Scorn, going to reveal Dragonlord Ojutai. Very powerful card is Slumgar Scorn. Lussier will draw.
And I believe that was another copy of Slumgar Scorn, which is great here for Griffin. He can just wait. Brian's got to commit a lot of mana on his main phase to get anything good going. And if he does that, Griffin can go ahead and counter it. And if Brian doesn't do anything productive, that's a great window for Griffin to go ahead and cast Dig Through Time.
Yep. Sylvan Carry added. Pass the turn back. And if you're Lussier, you got to be thrilled that was your opponent's turn.
Yeah, Brian there, I think, playing the carry added to try to set up a turn next turn where he can play Whisperwood Elemental with Stubborn Denial backup. Not clear what the Stubborn Denial is really worth because he doesn't have a 4-power creature in play, but that's at least what appears to be the line that Brian is taking. Also, I think he probably suspects Griffin's got a bunch of mana up. He's got some answer to this Whisperwood Elemental. Running it into that answer is very bad here because it's really the only card left in Brian's hand that matters, but this is just a great window now for Griffin to go ahead and cast Dig Through Time.
Man, I think he'll probably take the opportunity to do that. And that's exactly what he's going to do while playing around Stubborn Denial, as he should, since he knows that it's there. So Lussier will take a look at the top 7, take 2 with him. Dragonlord Ojutai, another copy of Dig Through Time among the options here for Griffin. And some pretty good ones.
Griffin just looking at a bunch of options here. It looks like he's taking land number 5. He's just got a lot of great options here to make sure that Brian is going to struggle to stick a 4-power creature. And as long as that happens, you know, Griffin's going to be under very little pressure, if any pressure at all. And a lot of the ferocious cards, especially Stubborn Denial, are things that Griffin can pretty easily work around.
Take a draw. Dig Through Time. Pluto Delta very quickly getting sacrificed. I have to imagine this one's going to get a swamp. There it is.
And I think Griffin may have taken Hero's Downfall as the other card, which leads me to believe that this turn he's going to tap out for Dragonlord Ojutai and assume that he can follow up, kill whatever Brian seeks into play, and take the game over from there.
There is the Dragonlord.
So this is now an opportunity for Brian to get Whisperwood Elemental into play. And it's possible Griffin thought, well, Brian's probably out of things to do, really, if he played Caryatid last turn instead of trying to resolve something big. So this is a very good setup here for Brian. He gets Whisperwood Elemental in play. That's now a 4-power creature, something that's totally capable of racing Dragonlord Ojutai. He still has the Stubborn Denial. So this is a really good opportunity here for Brian. And it's possible that that Caryatid last turn from Brian really threw Griffin off the scent of what was going on in Brian's hand.
Potentially. Because now he's got Wishwood and a Manifest creature alongside with it. So now this game has certainly changed. For Dolan, his last card in hand, his Stubborn Denial, which Lussier does know. And he'll have to play accordingly.
This was the worst case scenario for Griffin.
Absolutely.
I think that if he suspected that Whisperwood Elemental was a card that Brian could produce, he would not have tapped out last turn for Dragonlord Ojutai. Griffin is still not in capital T trouble yet, but Brian is making at least a game out of it.
Well, he's trying to put him in trouble. That's for sure. Time to take a look at a couple of cards here. Now, the one thing that Griffin can do is he can kind of overpower Brian a little bit. You know, he attacked here with Dragonlord Ojutai. It hit. Dolan went down to 13. He's looking at another Dragonlord Ojutai off of this hit that he could take. You know, if he maybe wants to go that route, in case, you know, he wants to just have a backup one of those, because obviously you can't have two in play at the same time, but there are definitely some options here that are really appealing.
The big thing, I think, from Griffin's perspective is trying to set up basically a removal spell and a counter spell, or two removal spells in the same turn, because he's got to push through the Stubborn Denial.
Well, here's Hero's Downfall. It's going to go after Whisperwood Elemental. Just going to sacrifice there. Interesting to see him not even try to fight with Stubborn Denial.
I wonder if that means that the Manifest creature is something substantial.
Okay.
That play makes sense if there's something big down there.
Okay, that play makes sense then.
Because, you know, Brian knows that Griffin knows about the Stubborn Denial, so he's picking that fight that turn because he assumes that he can win it. What Brian now has done is said, all right, well, you've burned off 2 mana that you can't use this turn, most likely, a turn where you're anticipating being able to counterspell something, and now you have to slog through the Stubborn Denial again next turn.
Here's an Anticipate. I would be surprised, if we saw Stubborn Denial there.
The card advantage battle is kind of over for Brian, and the selection battle is over as well because of Dragonlord Ojutai. So Brian needs to just clutch onto this one Stubborn Denial to try to break up a significant spell on Griffin's side.
Sure.
But for as bad as this was going, that Brian sort of getting a little tricky there a couple turns ago, not casting the Whisperwood Elemental. He's still in this one. And we might get to the spot where maybe he's ripping something like Crater's Claws or Lightning Strike for lethal. That the game could get into that sort of spot. There's been a couple worst case scenario turns here for Griffin now back to back in a spot where it looked like he was going to win this game very easily, and now it's gotten challenging.
Well, team are always trying to make it challenging on these control decks. There's ultimate price. There's a stubborn now finally. I think we'll finally see the Slumgar scorn here. So Griffin gets to win this. Now, we don't know what that manifest creature is. That's the big question. But the card in Brian Dolan's hand, this is the one that Griffin does not know about, is another copy of Whisperwood Elemental.
And that's going to put Griffin back into the same jam. And I don't think he has an answer in his hand right now. It looks like his hand is Crux of Fate, Dig Through Time, and Slumgar.
Yeah.
So this is a couple turns down a row where it looked like, if you're in Griffin's seat, it looks like you're about to lock up the game. And Brian just keeps on cranking out these cards that are the worst case scenario for you.
And he's just done it again. And there's another Whisperwood Elemental. Trigger Manifest. And keep in mind, Lussier's at 5.
I know. Even if Griffin is able to stabilize this board, it's possible that he just gets burned out by something like Crater's Claws or some big manifest creature unmorphing.
Please come to the side of the stage.
Dig Through Time here.
Julian Dorsett and Lanson Wong.
Lussier going to look at 7 cards. Of course, take 2 with him. One of them is Foul-Tongue Invocation.
Foul-Tongue Invocation is okay in the sense that Griffin's kind of in the market to gain some life, though it's not clear that it pushes him out of Crater's Claws range anyway. The issue with it is that Brian has a very expendable creature in play right now with that Sylvan Carry added.
Decisions here for Lussier. What to take?
And with Griffin's hand being as expensive as it is and having missed some early land drops, on these Dig Through Times so far, the first one and possibly this one as well, he's been compelled to take a spell and a land as opposed to 2 spells. And that's not what you want to be doing with Dig Through Time. You want to make your land drops and then get a dissolve and an ultimate price and bury your opponent that way. Instead, Griffin's been forced to take 1 spell and a land, and Brian's Whisperwood Elementals are allowing him to overpower the 1 spell Griffin has gotten up to this point.
Here's 5 mana. Crux of Fate. I bet he's going to select to destroy all non-dragons, which is actually a really good combo in this situation. There are the manifest creatures. It was a Courser and a Wild Slash. So Crux of Fate actually looking really good in this situation.
And now the Foul-Tongue Invocation is great here for Griffin as well. It takes care of the last creature. It allows him to gain 3, which pushes him out of Crater's Claws range now that there's no 4-power creature in play. So this is a very good setup.
Yeah, since it's to be a pretty good turn. Ochtai going to come across. Disdainful Stroke might be the selection. It looks like it is.
Yeah, I like taking Disdainful Stroke here. At this point, the cards Griffin's got to be worried about are really expensive haste creatures or Crater's Claws.
There's Foul-Tongue Invocation. Let's see what this manifest was. It was Crater's Claws. There you go. And if that wasn't the card that was on Lussier's radar before, it certainly is now.
Yep.
There'll be some life gain there from the Foul-Tongue Invocation. And we head back Brian's way. Well,
I mean, Brian is not out of it.
He is making this hard.
This game looked like Griffin was going to very easily win. And it's just every turn, it's, yep, that's really bad. Yep, that's really bad. I think he may be unable to beat a blocker plus a
Disdainful Stroke
at this point.
Yeah.
But Griffin's also got to be careful here because he's got to make sure that he can get enough cards out of his hand to make sure that he doesn't die to the monstrosity trigger from the Stormbright Dragon. One of the cards in his hand is a counterspell. Another one is a Thought Seize, which doesn't really help for these purposes.
Yep. We'll take a look at Dragon Lord Ojutai. We'll see if this is a trigger that you actually have to do. Just combat damage to the player. Yep, you look at the top 3 cards. Okay, so you have to. Dragon Lord's Prerogative, not you. Probably going to say no to that.
BioBlight's at least castable,
yes.
So that's fine.
Just needs cards that he can get out of his hand. Because the straightforward play here is to play Silumgar and then have Disdainful Stroke up. But as you mentioned, he could die if he has too many cards in hand.
He's got to make sure he can at least get the cards out of his hand.
Yeah.
And getting the second Dragon Lord into play this turn is really important because Brian's at 3, so it means you have 2 lethal attackers next turn.
Super important, yeah.
If Brian's at 4, things get really hairy because you don't have lethal guaranteed next turn, and then Brian's still drawing live potentially.
Yep. And reorganize the mana here, will Griffin. Now here's Silumgar. Hexproof pretty important here too. Pass that turn back. Dolan will draw. He does have land number 7.
Is that a Knuckle Blade?
I think
Knuckle Blade might punk him out here.
Oh my gosh.
Because you can't stroke that, and that's haste.
Gosh. And he can't. I don't think he has the mana.
Oh my goodness!
I don't think he has the mana to cast BioBlight either.
He's got Swamp and
Temple.
Unbelievable.
That's a pretty unreal game to lose. Oh my goodness! Brian Dolan gonna win game number 1 here.
On earth.
Over Griffin.
Because
wow,
Griffin in that spot has to choose between leaving up BioBlight or Disdainful Stroke.
Yep.
Because he doesn't have any blue-black dual lands in play.
Yep.
So if he leaves up one, he can't leave up the other. Disdainful Stroke covers against almost everything.
Crater's Claw, Storm Breath Dragon.
Yeah, all the cards you can imagine.
Yep.
But Savage Knuckleblade, much maligned Savage Knuckleblade, the perfect card in that spot, able to generate exactly lethal. That's unbelievable. We had several turns in a row there where we're saying, Brian's making a game out of it, still really bad, but it looked like he was going to get locked out, and he had 4 or 5 just perfect draws there in a row, played very, very well, and was able to sneak out game 1. That was incredible.
That was really something. Teamer Aggro was up a game over Esper Dragons. We'll take a look at Griffin's sideboard here. Find a Perlic Ancient, 2 copies of Dragon Lord's Prerogative, another copy of Foul-Tongue Invocation, 4 Surge of Righteousness, 2 Duress, 2 Tasker of the Golden Fang, a BioBlight, and a Negate and an Ultimate Price.
So, I mean, there's some okay options here. Nothing that seems great to me. I think the 2 copies of Tassiger, they're pretty reasonable blockers in this kind of matchup. I think Ultimate Price answers enough problematic cards, especially Stormbreath Dragon, that it's worth bringing in here. Because Brian's on the very low-end build of Teamer, I think that BioBlight's not great in the matchup. It does do work against the Rabble Master Frostwalker builds, but Brian's on Caryatid, Courser, and so forth. I think the Foul-Tongue Invocation is okay in this matchup too, though it does get tripped up there by Sylvan Caryatid like we saw in that game. So there's some okay options here, but nothing great in my opinion.
What do we see on the other side for old Teamer?
Well, this is where Brian gets to make some pretty serious upgrades here. 4 copies of Disdainful Stroke, 3 Ash Cloud Phoenix, 2 Roast, 2 Seismic Rusher, an Anger of the God, and Encase the Ice, a Feed the Clan, and a Plummet. So Brian's got 3 copies of Wild Slash and 3 copies of Lightning Strike in his main deck that are very easy to cut. On top of that, he's got some other not so great creatures, things like Courser, Krufix, Sylvan Caryatid. You can get away from a little bit of that stuff. So I think the 4 copies of Disdainful Stroke come in, the 3 copies of Ash Cloud Phoenix. Those seem like 7 easy ones to bring in. I don't mind bringing in the Plummet here as well, because you know there's Dragon Lord Ojutai, and it's likely, you know, Griffin can sideboard into more problematic flyers, things like Dragon Lord Slumgar, Icefall Regent. You can anticipate those kind of cards being in the sideboard, so I think the 1 Plummet is fine to bring in.
Well, these players will shuffle up after one heck of a game 1.
That game was nice.
Savage Knuckleblade getting the job done. Timely top deck there for Brian Dolan. We'll very quickly talk about Jacob Wilson and his token from winning the Season 1 Invitational. The young master could add this to his resume. He is now a monk for Monastery Mentor.
Yeah, congratulations to Jacob. Somehow this token got made in about 5 days' time after the Invitational win. This is part of the prize for winning an Invitational. This token is now available for people as well. And as you know, we crank out one of these after every Invitational to reward our winner.
You can, of course, pick this up with any order at Star City Games over $5 at our dealer booth as well, or online at the website. You can get these a myriad of places. That's probably the easiest way to do it. Open Series events as well.
Yeah, you get them for entering 5 Premier IQs, not just the ones at Opens, but at your local store as well. The 20K Open Series events like we're running right now, and any order with StarCityGames.com in excess of $5. But these tokens are available for a limited time. We produce new ones all the time, so if you want to get your Jacob Wilson Monk token, either enter one of our large events or place an order on the website today.
And congratulations once again to one of Magic's best young players, maybe Magic's best young player.
He's got to be in the conversation,
He's
right?
20.
20.
He's 20 years old.
It also depends how you define young.
20 is young, no matter how you slice it.
I think Shahar Shenhar has a claim as well.
I think he's 21.
21?
So he is also young. Yes, the back-to-back world champion may be better. Maybe.
I mean, back-to-back world champions, quite the accomplishment.
Yes.
But Jacob Wilson's got a lot of game as well.
This is true. Shahar kind of just gets forgotten about. It's kind of weird.
It is strange.
It's like he just kind of goes kind of a long time between accomplishments. He doesn't write, so you don't see him as much.
Just quietly grinding away at the World Championships.
Yep. Goes to Worlds.
Yeoman's work.
Yep. Goes to Worlds, just keeps his platinum level.
Yep.
No big deal. Griffin going to send it back very quickly.
If that's a game, if I'm Griffin after that game, I'm thinking, what on earth happened?
Yeah.
Because you can sense there's a couple spots there. I think the term where Brian plays carry added and Griffin untaps and plays Dragon Lord Ojutai, where if you ask Griffin, are you winning this game, he would say, for sure. It's elementary, and if Brian draws pretty well from here, he can make the game drag out for a couple more turns, but there's no way I'm losing. Just doesn't look like that sort of game at all.
After the foul telling invocation, I thought it was over.
I thought it was over several spots. The Crux of Fate foul telling invocation turn looked like, all right, we finally got it locked up.
Because that turn was so good.
That turn was great. He went up to 8.
Yeah.
Brian had no board. Like, what more do you want, you know?
And Brian going to keep after his mulligan. He'll play a Temple of Deceit. Take a look at the top card. Going to consult the hand before deciding what he wants to do with the scry. It will stay on top. Pass the turn back over to Dolan. Of course, your crew fixed the draw. Shiv and Reef is how things will start.
And Brian played a very tight game 1.
Absolutely.
That was no mistake.
Leave that card on top, will Griffin. There's a Forest. There's a carry added. Pass the turn back over to Griffin, we will.
And you can see that Brian has sided into a lot of counter spells. He's brought in to the disable strokes. He has the stubborn denial as well. And with Griffin kind of fumbling around a little bit with these comes into play tap lands, Brian may be able to set up some spots here where he's able to deploy threats and have counter spells available for Griffin's response.
Lussier with just a third temple and a passing of the turn over to Dolan. That's a Wooded Foothills. This is a Savage Knuckleblade. He'll have to take 1 to cast it, of course. Slumgar Scorn showing a Dragon Lark. Showing the regular Slumgar.
So that was a spot that this is probably the first play of the game where I was not thrilled with what Brian did. I think there's probably colored mana issues that makes him want to sit on the Wooded Foothills here, but I think that he would have been better served maybe getting a mountain there and leaving the carry added up, so he would have been able to Stubborn Denial back in the event that Griffin had a 2-mana response to the Knuckleblade.
Sure.
Exactly what happened.
Because having actual Knuckleblade in play is actually pretty good against Griffin's deck.
For sure. At that point, Brian probably gets to untap with the Knuckleblade and Disable Stroke in his hand, and that's a very good spot to be in.
Courser. Resolves. Temple of Bannon on top of the deck. Temple of Bannon enters the battlefield. There will be a trigger. Carry out its top card. I have a feeling it's going to become the bottom card.
Now, I understand to some extent why Brian didn't want to do that, because the Teamer deck is actually so colored mana sensitive that you don't want to make a decision on your Wooded Foothills until you absolutely have to. But I think Knuckleblade with Stubborn Denial back up there is just too juicy.
Hero's Downfall will take care of the Courser. Time for Lussier to draw. Dig through time.
It's an important one because he was in 1-for-1 world here, having mulliganed an opponent with a lot of cards in hand. So dig is very valuable. Can't cast it just yet. But it's an important card for him to try to resolve at some point.
And there's a mountain.
I still can't get over game one.
Me either.
That was a crazy game for Brian to pull out.
No other card lined up better than Knuckleblade that last turn of the game. It was incredible.
No, that is the card.
Yeah, just incredible. Stormbreath dragging the draw. The thing about this Teamer deck that's so interesting is, especially with how Brian Dolan's version is built, he's just going to go, all right, here's an awesome threat, another awesome threat, another awesome threat. Can you beat my awesome threat?
This is particularly the case post-board when he gets access to the sample stroke as well.
Yeah.
So he's not just curving out into the face of Crux of Fate and hoping that it's not there. He can play back against Griffin's big responses.
Which is what makes life really, really difficult for the Esper Dragons deck. There's land number 6 for Lussier. Island or a swamp coming. It will be an island. We might see Salongar here.
Griffin definitely aware of Stubborn Denial and does not want to spend a turn here tapping out for a spell when Brian has just a single blue up. Deploy your creature this turn and then try to fight your battles with spells when you have more mana available to play multiple spells or to counter back.
There's Salongar. Mountain the draw here for Dolan. 5 mana going to be tapped. It's Stormbreath. These dragons are free to attack. There's a block. Simple one.
And this is very good tapping here from Brian because he knows about Foul Tongue Invocation, and the card that he wants to sacrifice if that card comes up is the Caryatid. So this way he plays around Foul Tongue Invocation and still has the ability to Stubborn Denial in the event that Griffin plays a big spell.
Very smart tapping.
Also, because Brian's on a curve of just dragons right now, Crux of Fate is not very helpful because Griffin would have to lose his creature as well.
Correct.
For all you Teamer fans out there, I hope you're videotaping this one. Because this is as good as this deck has ever looked on camera.
Yeah, by a lot, actually.
And this is 7-0 right now.
Yeah. It's funny because the Teamer, you know, you always think of it and it's like, well, the cards just have to be there, right? Because all the cards are so good. And it's just what's the right build of the deck, and maybe Brian Dolan's found it. He's 7-0. Did not have 2 buys coming in. We know who those players are. And he's up a game, and it looks like he's well on his way for this one. Ultimate Price is going to go after Stormbreath Dragon. The trigger from Thunderbreak region will occur, and now you Stubborn Denial it.
Pretty good combat here. 3 damage on the house.
Yeah. Would you like to try again? Here's Dig Through Time. Oh boy. This is getting ugly.
I mean, at this point, it's not even clear what Griffin's drawing towards. Crux of Fate, I guess, is okay here, but Brian's got a handful of cards, and Griffin has nothing. Spot removal certainly doesn't do anything.
Yeah, no, spot removal is
trash. Too much damage. Oh, yeah, Crater's Claw is left over for good measure.
That's neat. Yeah, and Lussier has no cards in his hand. Plays Dismal Backwater off the top, pass the turn back. I think we're going to see Brian Dolan win this match here, folks.
I think this is a Crater's Claws here coming out.
There's the attack with the Dragons. Simple block. Down to 5. Hadouken via Crater's Claws. That is going to do it. Brian Dolan going to win this match here over Griffin Lussier. 2 games to 0. Teamer Aggro is 8-0 here in Providence, folks.
That was great. That game 1 especially, I mean, that's best of SCG Live stuff right there.
Yeah, I think so. That was an impressive game 1 win, and game 2 was very straightforward and simple. But you can see why Teamer lines up very well against control decks. This is something that Shaheen has talked about quite a bit. It's just the combination of really good cards, all of which you have to answer, and then timely counterspells.
And the post-board configuration there, too, for Brian, where he gets the biggest thing that causes Brian problems in game 1 is that he's got lightning strikes and wild slashes that are pretty bad. to be able to remove those cards from his deck and get copies of Disdainful Stroke plus, Ash Cloud Phoenix, I believe he brought in there as well. He just gets durable threats and those 4 counter spells, and that's just a really tough package. I don't know if Griffin right now is thinking about that game number 1. Game 2, there wasn't a lot to be done. Brian just had a very solid draw. Griffin took a mulligan and so forth, but game 1 is one I'm sure Griffin's going to go back and look at, because if you're in that seat, losing that game feels like something must have gotten away from you.
I mean, you can kind of see how Griffin looks right now, where he's kind of analyzing things in his head, and I think we've all been there before. Okay, I didn't win the match, sure, but what went wrong?
Right. Was I